Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Reaper Pro Tips with me, your host, Anne, and disembodied hands, Quindy. Lots of Quindy, with a tiny portion of Justin and infrequent John visitations. Hi. It's one of those mornings. It's one of those Mondays. Oh, it's so Monday-ish. So Monday-ish. Not joking. Very sluggish morning. Lots of Quindy, yes, lots of Quindy. Rather than nailing myself down to percentages, Quindy, I thought I would generalize today instead. All my brain, all the technical difficulties that are occurring are entirely brain tech. Brain tech. Darn brain tech. Can't add RAM to it. Can't really upgrade it. Yeah, I can't do that either, Crowley, sorry. Yep, no coffee for Anns. No coffee for Anns. So I realized, guys, that that I don't know if I don't know how much work I will put into this model. I'm kind of feeling like maybe I want to not finish this one. And that's twofold. One, I've realized that doing a lot of the texture work is going to take a long time. It's going to be pretty boring. And two, I realized that, it's just what we always get. People come on, they ask about the model, and then it's not available. So I'm kind of like feeling about that. So what I'm going to do is I'm at least going to finish out part of everything. So I'm going to show you how to do the texture on the wool. I'm going to show you how to finish out the white here. We're going to do the red. We're going to do some of the gold on the epaulette here. But I'm probably not going to push and do the whole thing. Because just like working on the dragon during the Kickstarter, it's just a lot. And I've already showed you really a lot of the stuff that's really unique to Bus is like how cool, crazy you can get on the skin tones and all that, and doing the hair at this scale. So yeah, I just don't think this has like a lot of teaching opportunities once we get beyond a certain point. So yeah, exactly, Nomad Zeke. Well, hello, Geiler. Good afternoon. Good morning for me. I'm on the opposite coast. But yeah, so, and it's not even Anne burnout. It's more that, I'm just always conscious of when I'm repeating myself a lot, and then it's not fun for me, not fun for you. So yeah, so that's what I'm thinking. I was thinking that this morning when I was looking at her. I really love how her face has turned out. Don't get me wrong. But at the same time, I'm like, well, this is going to get a little bit repetitive, and I'm not like all into repetitive on this stream. So if we want repetitive, well, then, I don't mind doing that on my stream, my Saturday stream, because that's only once a week. But, that's my own call. But for Reaper, I like to try to be as educational as possible. So anyway, today, what do you guys want to work on? Do you want to continue to work on our white and bring it up higher, or do you want to work on the wool texture on there, or do you maybe want to do an epaulette? I'm going to leave it up to chat, because I could do any of those things. Come on, chat. Rally. What do you want? What do you want to do? Or do you want to add the touches of red? You want to do the white? And Aaron wants the white. Because we started the white very purpley. We have a vote for gold and a vote for white. Chime in, chat. Chime in. Speaks. You want to do the gold braid? The epaulette. Sounds like we've got 2 golds now. 2 golds and a white. Waiting to see other people typing things. I know you're all at work. I know it's Monday. I know you're busy. Yeah. Let's hear from all you lurkers. I'm with that. Let me see here. What do I have? If I want to do gold, I want to get it from the other room, so. Looks like we got 3 gold votes. 3 gold votes. Well then. Maybe I should do something different. Just what you want me to work on today, Narwhal. We could do the white. We could continue to work on the white. We could do wool texture on the blue, or we could work on the gold epaulette. I don't want anything. Brock, I've got a sluggish brain, and it just like, So far, gold has the overwhelming thing. Overwhelming majority gold epaulette. Which is cool and all. It does have those little braid things. Okay. Yes, gold is overwhelming at this point. All right, I'm gonna call it and go gold if I wanted a real you know, like kind of a poll. I would have had Quindy put it up. Let's do something different with our gold. I was like, lately I've been mixing it up just to show you guys like what I've been doing. A lot of my starting recipes for gold. First of all, always start your gold a little bit darker. Don't just put on like a yellow color and like try to go from there. It just usually does not work out very well. Unless you're going over black primer, then you might be able to get the brighter yellow to work, because essentially the black primer will darken it down. Yep, there's lots of gold recipes, Narwhal. Normally my recipe starts with something like 9429 rich leather. Lately I've been starting, you can also start with NMM Gold Shadow, which is 9301. Lately I've just been mixing whatever because my rich leather has been stuck in the other room. I've also lately used something like Shield Brown. But really you could use a lot of different browns for it. I might just mix myself a color today. I was looking at Saddle Brown, but Saddle Brown doesn't quite have as much coverage as Shield, so I think I want a higher coverage color. I think I'm going to go for those. Let me put my Saddle Brown back. So I'm going to mix these two. I'm going to use mostly Shield, but I wanted a little more yellow. The nice thing about the rich leather, 9429, and its friend, polished leather, 9430, is that they're very yellow, but they're still a brown. So they work very well, but polished leather is a little bit too yellow for me. Correct, Narwhal. That is what we're dealing with. We are, in fact, working on non-metallic metal. So we also have worked on metallics on this stream. So one of the latest metallic models that I did was actually this bronze golem, who does have actual metallic paint. Although it's hard to see it sometimes because I've verdigreed it so heavily. Yeah. But this one, we're not working with metallics. Especially not for an epaulette. And the reason for that is that this is more like gold thread, but it's also just got some plain like yellow ochre like cloth, right? So these aren't like gold foil. So that's one of the reasons that I would not go for metallics on this model. There are gold buttons on the model, but in general, all of her gold accoutrements, like perhaps the lining on here on her white, and this is all like just like yellow, like kind of mustard colored, gold cloth that's got little threads of gold colored metal like woven through it, right? That's how they did it. So that's why I wouldn't go full on metallic with this. I think it would just not look right. It would look kind of fake and not look correct. So on bus, otherwise, I like going full metallics when there's a big space. So like my Privateer Press Grandmaster winner is in the other room, but I always drag out Mr. Grumpy. So Mr. Grumpy's great for this because his breastplate is so nice and big, and I could do an awful lot to it. So Mr. Grumpy was probably when I realized that I really loved to do true metallics on big models. So normally for bus, if I can, then I will use true metallics. But on this one, I feel it's not suitable for the actual material I'm painting. And I do like realism, even though we're painting her she's kind of cartoony. She looks very, very Pixar right now. But nonetheless. So I'm going to start out what you usually want for your base for gold is you're looking for a medium brown that's pretty warm. So you don't want it to be too gray, but you don't want it to be super, super yellow either. This one is so yellow that if I add a drop of white to it, it really goes yellow. So instead, I'm going to start with Shield Brown, which is a good medium brown. It is a little bit gray. You can see that it's kind of grayed out. So to kind of counter that, I'm going to come in with my really yellow brown and just do a little mix. I'm just going to put a little bit of it in, though. Shield Brown is warmer than you think. It does have a lot of yellow ochre in it. Here, let me squeeze it out and show you. So we're going to do 4 drops of Shield Brown. And the reason for that also, the other reason I like it as a base for gold, is that it's got very high coverage. So it's a good base color just because you don't have to work super hard. So that's not a bad color to start with for gold, although it is a little bit, like I said, a little bit grayed out, a little bit muted. So we're going to take a little bit of our polished leather, which is a very yellowy brown. You could do this with rich leather too if you wanted to, 9/429. And I'm just going to put a drop of it in. You can see the difference. You could also decide to put a straight up drop of like yellow oxide in from the Kickstarter. So if you have the oxide yellow, you could also decide to pop that in there and that would shift it even more yellow. Although one of the things I do like about polished leather instead is it does have a certain amount of like a little bit of more of an orangey tone to it than this yellow. You can see that. You can see that's a little orangier than this. So I feel like adding a little bit of orange or red tone to your gold gives it a richer color signature. And it feels more like gold to me. So that's why I do it. I'm going to grab my mixer. Oh, you just got the starter kit? Yeah, so you are new. If so, welcome to the hobby. Or you've just gotten the starter kit for MSPs. Like, did you get the Learn to Paint kit or did you get the paint starter set? And if you don't have a lot of MSP, just pretty much still look for a kind of a medium to medium dark brown that looks like it's in this range. This kind of color is what you want. You want a yellowy brown. As I mentioned, other good colors to use for this would be 9301 NMM Gold Shadow, if you want to really go just with the NMM Gold Triad, or Uniform Brown 9127 used to be my go-to for NMM Gold base coats, like all the time. Learn to Paint core skills. Okay. Ish. Okay, that's cool. Hi, Acid Rib Punk. It's going. We're talking about mixing up a base color for non-metallic metal gold. We're going to do the epaulette on our bust today. That's what people wanted to do. It is definitely the most interesting shape on the model right now, so I do not blame them. Let me grab my glasses out here and we can start applying this color. So this is a 4-to-1. We started with Shield Brown for its high coverage and it's nice, kind of mid-range brown color. And then I wanted it a little more golden, so I added more of a yellowy brown, the polished leather here. I could even go more yellow than that, but polished leather doesn't have... No, it doesn't have red. That's in the next kit, Narwhal. The thing about it is that Reaper wants to keep the price point low on those, so there's a limit to like how many paints we could put in. And when Rhonda was creating that paint kit, the intent wasn't to give you like a starter set of paints. We actually have a starter set of paints that's completely different, but the point was to give you exactly the paints you needed to do the lessons in that kit. So... no, there is no red in Learn to Paint Kit 1. There is red in Learn to Paint Kit 2. Because they're really meant to work together. So if you want just a paint set, then the starter set from MSP, like we do just I think a 12, you guys said a 12 color starter set, that I initially put together, and they've made some changes to it over the years. But it's still a really good starting point for MSP. But the Learn to Paint Kit, its whole point is to teach you those techniques. So Rhonda had a limited selection of colors to work with, and she had to give you the colors that you needed. So that's why it's done that. But make sure that hey, Anora, thank you for that Prime sub. I hope I pronounced your name right. Noir, I don't know. It's a Monday. I probably said it better than if I tried to say it. Yeah, there's the starter set. So if you just want a general set of paints, and if you're not wanting the technique booklet, which is honestly, the Learn to Paint Kit 1 is totally worth it for the technique booklet and the recipes alone. But if you know how to paint and you just want to try MSP, get the starter set. That'll give you a good selection of our colors to kind of experiment with and see if you like them. All right, so this is our starting color for our gold. Another thing you can do if you're mixing colors is just if you've already got colors on the model, you can kind of hold the model up and see, hey, is this going to clash with anything? And the answer is no, not really. It goes pretty well. Hey, Neural, thanks for the resub. 30 months. Nice. All right, now, I did do a Zenith Prime on this, which is why we've got a black-white fade here. So I probably, if I want to preserve some of that Zenith, I don't want the paint to be necessarily full strength. I think this is going to be okay. Maybe I'll put just a tiny bit more water in it. If you really don't care about preserving your Zenith and you're just planning to kind of paint it. If you think you can memorize where the shadows are, for example, this one's very easy. If you don't really want to preserve your zenith, then you don't have to worry about thinning your paint a little more. If you do want to see the effect of your zenith priming through your paint, then you definitely do want to thin your paint just a little bit more. Oh, cool. Thanks. Yeah, working on this one. We work on a whole bunch of models. Now I'll never be able to say your name again. Anuira, I think. But anyway, we have a 6 model rotation that we work throughout the week. So every day we work on a different model, and then we loop back around to the front. But yeah, we're working on a lot of different... More normally, since we're doing all Reaper, we're not working on any busts. But this one is one that Reaper put out for ReaperCon last year, so I decided to do it. This is more like what we normally work on, is 28 millimeter. So Bunny is more like what I normally work on. And we were working on her base last time. But yeah, since Reaper did put out this bust, I wanted to take the opportunity to talk to people about the way I paint faces at bust scale and eyes at bust scale, which we normally wouldn't have the opportunity to do on this stream. So we're just base coating now, but it's when you put this color down, it really should look really warm and kind of rich and like antique-y gold, like the kind of in that color range. You could probably start darker if you wanted to, but I just, I like working my NMM where I can give it a good solid base coat where my yellows aren't going to go too yellow over white. Yellow ochre goes very, very yellow, and I don't like that. So I want a little bit of a darker base, but I don't want a super dark base underneath it, because if there's something with a lot of black, putting a color with heavy yellow over black is usually going to give you a greenish cast, and we usually don't want that. Yeah, I did. But that's because the Catfolk palette and eyes were like, huge, relatively speaking. Huge. This cat has huge eyeballs. I mean, maybe not as huge as this, but the cat has huge eyeballs. Julie gave me huge eyeballs to work with. What can I say? And that was accompanied with a "Don't try this at home, kids." That was my Mythbusters episode. Don't try this at home, kids. I should have given the Mythbusters... I think I did give the Mythbusters disclaimer at least once during that stream. Don't try this at home, kids. This is a trained expert trying to do colored irises on this 28mm model. It's highly dangerous. Do not attempt without at least 4 fire extinguishers present. All right, so we're just blocking this in. And can you see already, since I did thin it, you can see how this is, the part that we're putting over black is darker and the part that was over white is lighter. And this is good. This reminds us, this means as we put in this base coat, this reminds us of where to put our highlights and shadows if you need the help. And I normally don't need a lot of help, but I kind of like having it like kind of just mapped out there. Sometimes I'll kind of go on autopilot when I paint, and having that shadow there will just remind me, hey, Anne, you doofus, don't paint that light. These little braids are super fun. Mostly this is just going to be meticulous painting. I will probably do some more underpainting to bring these parts up a little bit more. But a lot of it's going to be brush control. And I will go in and do some extra shading for sure. I like to start with this mid-range color so that I do have enough. It's kind of like right in the middle too. If I compare this color, let's see what it really is on the color wheel. So if you want to know how light or dark a color is, whip out your color wheel. I have a tiny color wheel. It's adorable. Bring your color over. Look at your grayscale here. Kind of take your grayscale and kind of bend, just gently bend back your your color wheel and kind of move the grayscale over the edge. So let's get a piece of black in here because sometimes that helps it look better. So it's definitely not a 6, I would say. Yeah, I don't think so. Probably a 5. Essentially, I'm getting too much light. There we go. I'm really getting too much light. Let's see. That's better. Well, maybe it's actually more like a 4. Or a 3. Really? No, 3 is too much. It's really, I'm lowering, putting the edge over it. And if you can see too light, then you know that it's not that. And if you can see that it's too dark, you know it's not that. So what I'm getting here is it's somewhere between a 3 and a 4 on my grayscale. So you're kind of looking, you just want to look like there, you can see the edge of the 4. You can see that it's lighter than this color, right? And then when you've got, you want to make sure you're going over that. And then there's the edge of the 3, and the 3 is maybe a little dark. So that means we're right on in the middle here. We're kind of a 3-4 with this. And then when you go to like look at highlights or look at other colors on your model, you can do the same thing, and you can see if you have a range of values over your figure. So yeah, I'm thinking we're between our 3 and 4, which is darker than I would have thought. This often happens. This is why I encourage everybody to learn to kind of do this. Is it can give you an idea of how light and dark your colors actually are, because we all have this idea of like, oh well, this is a middle color. Like I would have thought Shield Brown was a mid-range color, but actually no, it's quite dark relatively speaking compared to other colors. So I'd put it at a 3.5 on the grayscale. Just going to thin down a little bit of my base color here because I'm going to use it to mix some other colors now. I think I'm going to use my polished leather. I'm going to go very, very yellow now because gold braid. I'm going to be mixing our old standard lantern yellow. I use this a lot. And I'm going to actually this time mix it with polished leather and a little bit of my base color. When I am mixing, which I do a lot, as everyone knows, I almost always, when I go up with a highlight, I will always mix a little bit of my previous tone into that color at that point, just to make it work a little bit better together. Put it kind of in the same family. Yeah, usually my eye's pretty good on that one. The only thing that was throwing me off was the way it was looking on camera, so I had to look at it in person. But yeah, it's good that it also translated on camera. The shine from the ring light was really kind of disrupting it for me. Inara, thanks for that. But yeah, so between 3 and 4, so actually quite a bit darker, step and a half darker than I thought. I was thinking 5. So it just goes to show you that even me, and I'm an expert in paint all the time, I freaking formulated the paint line. But even I have to stop and double check myself when I'm not sure how light or dark something is relatively. And when you're trying to vary, too much. Okay. My pokey tool disappeared into my paint water. I'm going to rescue it. 1 second. Okay, I'm going to try to rescue it. Maybe unsuccessfully. No, I did it. Okay, cool. I now have a very wet hand. Yes, this is me today. Welcome to Anne on Monday morning in this week. It is, it's comedy. It's comedy for everybody but Anne. All right, so you can see how yellow this. Let's just back out. I'm just like, feel like I'm the edge of the world here right now. Probably because my camera is on the edge of the world because I want to stay in frame. But yeah, so see how yellow that is compared to that. But notice also that as far as light and dark goes, these are really close. So I want to push this color a little bit lighter because this is going to be a highlight color. And because it's going to be a highlight, it has to start moving toward actual gold, which is a very yellow color. So I've got to get a glob of yellow in there. My lantern yellow is almost gone, and I totally have to dig out a new bottle because I use it for gold all the time. So that's pretty good. And then we're going to use a brush full of that. So let us mix these together first and see what we've got. No, always add a drop of water. When I start mixing, I can always add another drop. Wow, that yellow like really brought that up. And look at how bright that is. Like, oh, it's almost obnoxious. This is the most obnoxious spicy mustard color you've ever seen. This is the crazy spicy mustard that they give you in little packets at Chinese restaurants sometimes. This is what this color reminds me of. Spicy mustard. All right, and the problem is that this is way too bright for our base color. When you get a very saturated color like this, saturated meaning bright in this case, I should qualify that, but it's very, very saturated with yellow. It's got a very high front load of yellow pigment, and it's really bright compared to our brown. That means they're not going to work that great together. And just like I said, I need to take a big brush full of this and pop it into this. That is going to bring that yellow down to earth. It's going to stop being so obnoxious. It's going to be a lot more muted, but it also is going to take it darker. So then to counter that, we're going to go to our old friend Pure White. It does look just like spicy mustard. That's what I thought, Quindy. That was, so if you want to paint spicy mustard, that was about 4 drops of polished leather 9430 with a drop of lantern yellow 9407. We will hereby call this color spicy mustard. So then I'm going to bring my white in. And I'm going to start thinking, uh-oh. The problem is here that I went too far. I used too big of I was so alarmed at the spicy mustard that I backed off from my yellow too much. Spicy mustard definitely sent alarm bells, so I think I need just a little bit more yellow. Boop. Yeah, it almost, but it needs a little more vibrancy. Now, you can arrive at the same color with different pigments, especially with yellows. And I say color, meaning hue, meaning it looks like X. But in reality, what'll change is the coverage. So like if you built this color with oxide yellow, as you just pointed out, you could get this color, but it wouldn't have and it would probably have better coverage. It might highlight differently though, because certain colors react differently to having white added. And when you add white to oxide yellow, it tends to, it'll brighten it at first, but then it'll fade it out pretty quick. Whereas if you add white to lantern yellow, you get more brightness for longer. So this is the thing about mixing colors, is there are many ways to arrive at this color. But then as you work with this color, mixing it with other things, that's where you'll see the differences pop up. This is darker, more muted than Ogre Skin. If you grabbed Ogre Skin and you added a brush full of this, you might get close. Like I said, many. Yeah, thanks, guys. This is my first day back on my diet. Here we are talking about, like tasty things. I can't have tasty things. Well, I can have plenty of tasty things, but they're not egg rolls. How about that? Don't make me crave egg rolls, please. Since I lost the 60 pounds, I've got a weight point that I will not allow myself to go over. And I hit that weight point. So I'm like, so now I have to wrestle myself back down 5 pounds. Alrighty, so we've got this yellow. Our brown has dried to a nice moderate brown. It's definitely more yellow than anything else that's on the model, so that's good. There are definitely other things on here that we need to base coat as well, but I've taken a break briefly from those just to concentrate on the epaulette. So we've got a couple of different things that we can do here. So I'm going to... Yeah, spring rolls are healthy, but I don't have fresh shrimps to put in them. I'm going to get some white mixed up because I want to do a little bit of underpainting and show you guys the difference here. So I'm going to pop just 4 drops of pure white over here. Our friend Pure White, Anne's favorite color pretty much. She doesn't feel safe crossing the street without you, Acid Burn Punk. This should be a plus. Cats are that way. Like a dog, you could trick a dog into, managing to do it on its own. But cats are just like, haha, no. All right, so we've got our white. No, not the fried spring rolls, correct. The rice paper, kind of the fresh spring rolls, not fried. All right, so we could just put this yellow right over the top of our base color, and it will be okay. But if we want it to really show up detail, then we probably want to do a little underpainting. And underpainting is putting down either a very dark or a very light color underneath before you go over the top in order to kind of change the way that things come out. So to get close and to do a few comparisons here, and you could just, I don't want to say, I wouldn't dry brush this because it's so shallow that you're probably going to get your dry brushing all into the cracks. You could side brush it. Like you could take a lot of paint off of your brush until you're getting close to dry brush land. And then you could use just the side of your brush. But you'd still, this is so shallow. See, it's still trying to get into the cracks there. So really, I don't think, I should have kept my paint a little thicker if I was going to do a side brush. So this is a good brush control exercise for those of you trying to build your brush control. Don't beat yourself up if you don't hit every little thing, but try to do it. My paint is thinned to a 2-to-1 on this, so it's quite thin, and I unloaded my brush a lot so that it keeps a really good point. If you get a big puddle that flows everywhere, unload more paint from your brush. How to reaper paints. Okay, traditional paints. Oh, I see. To the artist paints. Gnarl, I'm about to do a PDF on that for my Patreon at the $5 level. So you're talking pigments, right? In terms of pigments. Like, okay, so first of all, this is an equivalent to titanium white. Pure white is, the pigment in pure white is titanium white. Just like the pigment in pure black is coal black. But from there, you get some wide... it's called titanium because the actual pigment is titanium white. Whereas zinc white is a different mineral white. The names of Reaper paints, totally different. Except, yeah, no, we don't have... I didn't use artist names for anything when I built this line because it's not something that typically has gone over well in the fantasy mini painting genre. Didn't go over well in the historical genre either. There are exceptions, however. The exceptions are from the Kickstarter we just did. Oxide brown, oxide yellow, and oxide red are all actual pigments, like pure pigment colors. Everything else is fantasy names. But that said, many of our colors are equivalents, color equivalents, not necessarily chemical equivalents, but color equivalents for traditional artist tube paint colors. And I'm putting that PDF out probably in a couple days. I want to do just a few swatches for it. Just comparison swatches. I don't have comparison swatches for everything because a lot of my artist colors are actually in oil. And that is going to look different just because shiny and won't be dry by the time I need it to be. All right, so I'm underpainting a little bit of this. Right. Yeah, nobody is clear on all their comparisons. That's why I'm doing this PDF. Because we have a lot of people... We have more people than I would think now coming in with more of a traditional art background who actually are familiar with tube paint colors and wonder about equivalencies. So now we're going to just go over with these with yellow. Now this is straight up yellow and not with an underpaint of white. You can see how similar they are. Like I can see the difference, right? But I can't see the difference really a lot. Then I take my yellow and I go over these little white dots that I did. I really can just paint it right over the top. And that's the difference. I get a much stronger yellow painting over the white underpainting. So, and I didn't even have to hit every single one. I could just paint the yellow in a big swatch right over the top. And it still looks like I picked out every single thing with yellow. A lot of the clears are more transparent in many cases, though. It depends on the pigment, though. Just like with artist paint. Yeah, I mean, some of them you can... I've mentioned these on stream before a lot. Narwhal, like I've mentioned a ton that 9199 Russet Brown is actually like an equivalent for Artist Burnt Umber, for example. And Michael Proctor has mentioned that Blue Liner 9066 is an equivalent for the modern version of Payne's Gray. And if you're talking about clears, Clear Red is a rough equivalent for Naphthol Red. Only in hue. So you would call it Naphthol Red Hue. When you're talking in artist tubes, when you're talking about this matches the color but doesn't have the actual pigment the same, then you use the word hue on the end of the color. So if you see cerulean blue hue, it is not the original cerulean blue pigment, but it matches the color, for example. But yeah, so based on this, if I want a brighter yellow, I should definitely be underpainting with white, because I can hardly even see the difference here. Even though these colors look different, when I try to put this over a dark color, and this is true at putting yellows over dark colors in general. As you all know, if you've tried to paint yellow and thought that it was really hard, it's because it's so difficult to build up a yellow over a darker color. So usually you want to use something much more medium. For example, using oxide yellow and then building up yellows is a better thing. So if you were like painting something bright yellow, using a color like this, like our spicy mustard, actually would be a great base for yellow. Anything that looks like oxide yellow, anything that's in that range would make a great base color for yellow. Because they generally cover better. But they're still yellow enough to be a shadow for a bright yellow. All right, white, come on over. So when I load my brush for the underpainting, I'm really just like, I'm taking a little bit and I'm just like pulling it up, and I'm almost putting it on my brush, loading my brush and unloading my brush at the same time. Because you want very little paint on your brush. And the reason you thin this down to a 2-to-1 ratio is just so that it comes off of your brush super fast. Yeah, if I didn't have my food rule, but Ed doesn't believe in the food rule, so. So I'm sure there will be plenty of food names coming in Reaper Paint. Since I purposefully avoided them, and some of them are very, very obvious, I'm certain that it'll be a thing. So again, this is really good brush control practice. And if you mess it up, don't be too concerned. You can just take your initial brown and repaint the stripe. And if you've got very little paint on your brush, you may be surprised at how good your brush control actually is. Also, for people whose hands shake, note that I'm resting my hands flat on my desk surface when I do this. So I have this hand down. I'm not even just resting my hands on each other, but I'm resting them flat so that I can have both hands absolutely solidly anchored. At that point, any shake that's left is going to be micro shake from my fingers. And if you see that, try to relax your hand. Because usually if you've got shaking hands, it's because you're bearing down really hard on the brush because you're nervous about painting the detail. Some people may have neurological stuff going on, but the majority of us, it's that we're trying to be really tight, and so we're tightening up and tensing, and our brush is starting to shake. Yeah, well, that's when I'm pressing on the brush is when that's happening. If you relax your hand, relax your brush, just kind of let it go. Well, don't let it go or it'll go all over the place, but, you know, you get the idea. And don't hold your breath, or at least don't suck in your breath and hold it. exhale when you are painting, and then hold it at the end of your exhale if you're going to hold your breath. I just actually exhale and paint while I'm exhaling. So I take in a big breath. And then I exhale and paint. Now I don't want to go all the way up on this underpainting because, remember, there's a shadow here. I think what I'm going to do going up into that shadow, because remember there's a bit of a gradient, right? So I'm actually going to take my mustard yellow and I'm going to pop some white into it. I'm going to do it that way. And then I'm going to paint over the top with the yellow. So I mixed up a color that was kind of in the middle. Just a quick spot color. Okay, gonna grab that color. Remember, never paint after you've used like your brush to mix paint. See how much paint is in my brush? Never do that when you're doing fine detail. Rinse it out. In my case, I squeeze it out in my hand to get it to a good point. Then I reload. And the amount of paint I want to see on that brush is not taking up the whole brush, but taking up just that little bit, about a third of the brush. If you try to paint with all that paint on your brush, even if you have unloaded it and unloaded it, what you will notice is that the tip of your brush will not hit the really good point that my brush has right now. It will be very difficult to hit that. Now I'm going to grab a little bit more of our mustardy yellow color and just hit a little bit up higher, just to make it blend a little. So we've essentially picked up some underpainting on a lot of this. And when I pause and don't talk, that's when I'm exhaling. I'm actually going to finish out a lot of the rest of the sprayed. I let myself buy those snack mixes when I travel, but they're so pricey that I don't buy them otherwise. I really like the spicy pistachio one with the apples and cherries. Is it apples? It might not be apples in that one. So they're like travel food treat for Anne. Sometimes in here we've got a little bit of an artifact here where I feel like there's a tiny bit of texture in here that's kind of filler texture. You could ignore it or you can use it. I might put a split in there. I'm going to put a shadow. I'm going to put some shading in here too coming up. But I want to get a little bit more of this. Now remember, the backside of this is largely in shadow except for maybe a little bit back here. So I'm going to do just a little bit more. I can see my highlight extending here, and then you see this dark shadow here? That's where our black zenith was. So beyond that, I don't want to underpaint with white. And as we get there, I'm going to kind of shrink down my highlight to have that that effect. Oh. Yeah, definitely treats. Scaling back on my treats. Actually, I was scaling back on my chocolate. That's the easiest way to drop calories out of my diet. So just a little bit there, and you can see that shadow. I can extend it a little bit more if I wanted to, but I'm actually going to use my yellow mix to do that. To kind of blend it in. So I actually played World of Warcraft with David last night. He was so happy. Even though I have... Oh, guys, I got the beta key. I got a beta key for Overwatch 2. I've been playing Overwatch 2. I am the happiest Anne. I got lucky. They gave away 1,500 beta codes for each, like, for certain streams this weekend, and I managed to score one. So excited. And it's fun. Oh, I don't ever cut meals. That doesn't work for me. I just eat smaller meals. Keto, low carb is what works for me in general, though, because then I don't snack nearly as much. I'm not gonna go back to keto just because I did 2 years ago. I don't need to do more, but I am gonna pay more attention to how many carbs I'm having. You don't want to eat doubloons. That's good. I do, Big Eiler. Actually, I've been playing Lucio. He's just got a new look. He doesn't have a new skill set, but he benefits from the passive healing buff. I've won 5 out of 6 of my games that I've played so far. I am. The problem is I don't play tanks, so I can't try Doom. I do like 5v5. Like, I really am liking it. I like this style, how it's much faster. It's much movement oriented. And I love not having all those shields. It does make Reinhardt really powerful, I feel. But then in my level, I'm just a tiny little bronze silver level player. So I'm a noob. I'm a noob. I just play for fun. But I think he's always been powerful in our games, so. But yeah, I like it a lot, though. Like, I find myself playing a lot more movement-oriented, a lot more action, and I think I like that. I don't like... I like the move away from the passive playstyle in Overwatch 2 a lot. Yeah. I do love Lucio. I do have a lot of fun with him on certain maps with that. I'm getting a lot better at wall riding. Like... I'm getting a lot better at it. It's taken a long time for me to get better at it, because I was a Mercy main for a long time. I still love Mercy, and she's still my best hero, but because Lucio is very good right now, and I am fairly comfortable with him, I've been playing him instead of Mercy. I also feel like Mercy's not in a great place right now. Alrighty. Too easy to dive her. She's not mobile enough. Doubloons is donuts. Yes. I understood the doubloons and the donuts. All right, let's do a little bit of painting on the top here. Let's bring out some of this. Now, actually, at this point, I think I want to shade first. Whenever I've got a big, broad area that doesn't have, like, an imposed shadow like we had here, I do tend to like to bring in my shadows. I think here, one of my classical shadows that we haven't used, actually, for a little while because my brown liner was hiding, but I like to do a mix of russet brown and brown liner. Brown liner is a little more fluid out the gate. It has a little extra flow improver in it. It's a little bit darker. I don't want to go quite so black with my shadows, though, so I want to mitigate it. So just like I said earlier, this is an equivalent for Artist Burnt Umber, which is one of my go-to colors if I need that dark, rich, warm brown. So, but yeah, so that's okay. You don't have to be with it. I'm not with it. I'm totally out of it. So we're going to mix these two because I want something between them. And I consider these two very, very core colors if you're going to be picking up MSP. Russet brown ought to be like in everybody's toolbox. I cannot even like, if I had to pick a single brown to like have in my toolbox, a single brown, no other browns, russet brown would be it. That's even, I put that over walnut brown and over brown liner. So that may shock some of you. But for pure versatility in mixing, russet brown wins, hands down. I'm going to do 2 to 1, russet to brown liner. So 4 drops of russet, 2 drops of brown liner. I do big puddles of paint that way, except for the little spot color that I mixed here. That'll dry out a lot faster on this palette, but you can see that everything else where I'm working with the beginning of 2 to 6 drops of paint, everything else here is staying wet for a good long time. And that's the point of this palette with all these little wells, is that as long as you're using you need a minimum of like 6 drops of liquid. So if I'm doing like a 4 to 2 paint to water, like my white here, that's about the minimum. And it'll stay wet even better if you do like up to 6 drops of paint or even 8. Like it'll stay wet for hours. So, although that said, I do always keep an eye on kind of the edge of the paint. And when I start to see kind of a hard drying edge on my paint, that's when I kind of automatically load 1 more brush full of water into it, or 1 drop, depending. Because when I can still see the color just kind of being wet right up to the edge, then great. But it'll start to form a dark line. You can actually see it in this brown. See how it's got that dark line around it? And actually the shine stops right there. And that means that it's starting to dry around the rim. So now, because we've had that mixed since the start of the stream and it's been about an hour, now is the time to add in a drop of water to our base color. While I'm at it, I'm going to add a drop of water to this. Actually, I'm going to add 2 drops of water to this because that's 6 drops of paint. So that's a 3 to 1 then on my shadow. So I'll mix this up. And that will keep it good for another hour. I'm actually going to take my brush and just mix it right into my brown here. Because as I mentioned earlier, having a little bit of your base in everything else I find helps. That is the color that we get here. So that is a lovely coffee colored brown, isn't it? Bye, Shadow Raven. Enjoy your lunch. All right. So yeah, I like that coffee color I'm getting. Coffee with just a tiny bit of cream in it. And that's a good, we can see the difference here. We can see that there's definitely a difference between these 2 colors. So this is a good shadow. You want to be able, when you're shading, you don't want your shadow color to be too close. Now there isn't a lot of shadow up here, but I'm going to use this shadow color as a little bit of a liner, even though it's much lighter than liners usually are. And that's because this is up on top of her shoulder, it's getting a lot of light. The shadows are really going to be kind of inside here. I feel like this might even be too strong. Even though I thinned this color, I really want it to be more subtle of a shadow, like that, underneath. I didn't want to put the shadow in first because that would darken down everything. I want to really selectively paint in the shadow. And I don't want to, I would never put a wash over this whole thing, even though you might feel like you should because of all the texture, right? But putting a wash on this would be a terrible mistake because then you darken everything down and you'd have to fight to get it back up. Now we know that the light is coming kind of from the front here. And so I want to shade the back of these little nubbins. I might darken in all this area back behind this one, like that. I need to get on focus. I am too low, too high here. Here we are, there we are. So I'm gonna block in dark behind here. Back behind, and oh, that's a little bit of wet reflection. I'm like, wait a minute, I see a shiny back there, but it's really just the shine. That little light color is actually the shine of the wet paint. So that's brought in a little bit of shadow for us. Now we can come in with a little bit of highlight here on top of the braids. Now, because these aren't really gold, and because these are very small areas, we're actually not going to put an under reflection in per se. Because most of this is not actually metallic. It's just like yellow braid with a little bit of metallic thread in it. Whereas if I were doing this in real metallic, I'd almost have to put a little bit of reflection underneath these. But here, that's not the case. So what I'll probably need to do is put like a pure white highlight up here to show that there are bits of, you know, light catching that thread. But I won't need to do reflections. And I do feel like I want to take in my shadow color and line between these just a little bit, coming up from the bottom, not taking it all the way up to the top. And on a big model like this, you can do this. Like if you were doing an epaulette like this on a tiny little 28mm model, you wouldn't have the room to do these kind of subtlety things. But on a big bust, you do. You absolutely can line between all these little epaulettes. You can stop the line halfway up. You can concentrate the line on the bottom part of the little area. On a 28mm, you'd just paint it all. You'd line it all. But here we can keep it unlined on the top to show more light. I do need to bring my white up more though. So I ordered some new models from Reaper. I actually got the box. I haven't opened it. But I may look at replacing this bust with one of them. Since I don't, you know, I wanted to cover some of the things, some of the bust painting things, but then there we go. So you can clearly see the bits between without going in too far with the shading. Now, the other thing we can do with our shading, now that we have it, is you can see that some braids have more room between them and some braids are squished more together. Like here, we definitely have a split. So I can bring in a little bit of my shadow color and emphasize that by bringing it all the way down from the top. I'm bringing that shadow in on either side to make it more obvious. It's also kind of nice because it makes it more of a varied surface. It's not just a block of braids anymore. I'm splitting it up. Gives it more texture. We can also take our shadow color now and kind of bring it up as a general shadow, like right underneath the top of this. And we can, where we've got these splits, we can make sure that we take those lines down. And we could also do a little bit of that on the other braids, just to bring out a little detail. So that actually brings out a bit of texture everywhere. That's looking pretty nice, actually. Now let's do the top. Ooh, Infinity Minis. They're so tiny and so like perfect and so like hard to paint well. Do you play Corinico? I'm going to do a round highlight in my white on the top of each of these little round buttons. Going to do a little bit more here, and then I'm going to go and do those buttons. Now as we move toward the back, the highlight's still coming from this direction, so I'm going to start to put the highlight more on this side. I was curious. I was collecting an Infinity Army at one point. I ended up giving most of them to my friend who was going to teach me, because then he moved away, so he couldn't actually teach me to play. So I was like, do you want all those Nomads models? I still have some. Like, not the Nomads, but I kept my Ariadna models because they have wolf people. There we are. Got those blocked in. Yeah, right. When I get them all painted. So that's starting to look really nice, actually. I'll zoom out a bit. I like to zoom out and get kind of a look. So I still need to bring this up more, I think. More highlights here. But this is looking kind of nice. I'm getting these all blocked in. We're starting to see the pad take shape here. I do probably need to base coat some of the rest of my gold around here now to like kind of bring it all together. Of course I have the Wolfie faction. Come on. Who do you think I am? Been very honest with you guys about my werewolf obsession. It's really a wonder that I don't paint more werewolves on this stream. If you think about it, I've been very restrained. Yeah, let's just take our base color and do some blocking in a little bit, real quick. Just because of the white. There comes a point when I'm starting to finish out part of the model where extra white that's left on the model will just annoy me. And I'll be like, arg, I must get rid of this. I'm kind of at that point right now. I thinned down my base color a lot, so it's not going to cover great, but it'll at least give us, it'll at least take care of that white. Glittery. Why would I do a glittery werewolf? Only vampires sparkle. I don't want to do a glittery werewolf. Werewolves are cool enough to paint without adding glitter. Your instructions for painting your werewolf should not include just add glitter. NMM werewolf. No. Oh, yeah. Yujing is, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, some of those infinity things are pretty cool. Pretty beautiful. I hope they go into Siocast. I talked to them a bit at Adepticon, one of their guys. And there's apparently just a bit of resistance in their community because they've done metal, you know, to such a high quality for so long. But the Siocast stuff, I mean, that's Bones USA, for those who don't know, and it's really good. Really holds detail. The problem they're running into now is that tin is so expensive. It makes the game expensive. There we go. Yeah, very resistant. See, they shouldn't be, because Siocast is good stuff. I mean, in some cases, I think Siocast outperforms metal. But yeah, I mean, it will be what it will be. They may decide just not to change and just to keep raising prices. I guess if their fan base still plays and still, like, if they can still sell models at the price point and still have a viable business model, they're good. I mean, no question, but the metals are beautiful. But yeah. Reaper's still on the cutting edge of Siocast at this point. Siocast guy said Reaper is still the primary, like, we were the first adopter there, other than, of course, the manga community and the mecha community that had knowledge of it for a while. But as far as the companies, miniatures companies are. Yeah, sometimes people like the building aspect though, right? Like that's the GW thing, like the insane like model that I picked up to work on for Golden Demon next year. This guy. Like insane numbers of pieces. But a lot of people in the hobby really enjoy building. I mean, some of us are just like, "Arg, let me get to the painting," but there is definitely a part of our hobby that loves to build. So it's nice that there are models out there for those people. Like model kits. So I'm doing some shading here. I base coated this little gold bit back here. Oop, I just blorfed. Because I blorfed. Because blorfing. Because Monday. Definitely Monday. It's a good thing I'm not planning anything super like hardcore today. Planning to do some swatches and work on my PDF. But that hopefully should not like be anything lethal. I'm not doing anything super high impact today because it's a Monday. I'm kind of scared. Very, very blorf worthy Monday for Anne today. My brain is like still in bed. So here I'm copying the Zenith Prime a little bit, where I had some light and then I had some darks, and I'm generally just kind of working them in so I remember them. This is another way you can tackle that. When you've got areas that are obviously darker and lighter under your Zenith, you can do your shading and your base coat at the same time so that you can preserve that shadow, because you know it's going to cover, the paint's going to cover it up eventually. So instead, you can kind of, I did almost a little wet blend there to make sure I kept to those shadow areas so that I would remember that that is what they need to be. Oh no, the little antenna ears, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's hard call. I used to be such a metal fan. Like I always preferred metal. But now the plastic has gotten so good, all in its various forms. And now I'm actually, resin is my favorite, I have to say. Give me a good, really high quality resin. So I still think out of all the mediums, I still prefer resin. And I need to shade this. I'll do it on the top. Shade that. All right, and then this braid going around here is also gold. But yeah, this is a resin model. This, I think, or no, did they bones? I don't remember. Maybe this is, I think this is a resin. I think they shot, I think that's why it hasn't been redone, is that it was shot in resin. I am surprised that this bust didn't make it into the Bones Bones Kickstarter we just did. Bones 6. Or, yeah. All right. So once you start getting all of the primer covered up, then you start really seeing kind of where your lights and darks are on the model. which is useful. Now we do see at this point we're very duochromatic. We've got yellowy tones for the cream and the gold, and we've got the blue eyes and the aqua bandana and the blue here. We are going to use red as an accent color, and in fact I'm just realizing that maybe I want this little stripe to be red instead, like because her hair binding is going to be red. So now I've realized, well, maybe I shouldn't have made that gold, because I'm going to need to repeat that color around the model. She does have red in her lips and her cheeks, and so when I put the red here, that should work with everything else. But I don't want all of the red just focused here. I want your eye to be pulled around the model. So part of the feather is probably going to be red, and then I maybe want these little stripes. At least one of these little stripes I think needs to be red. You don't want to go like too red, because if you put too much red on it, then it's going to be super bright and it's going to draw the eye, and you're going to not look at other important parts of the model. So I think what I'm going to do is I will keep the outside one of these gold, and I'll restore the inside one of these in red, meaning I'll underpaint it in white again. And that's like called color composition, when you think about where colors should go around the model to kind of alternate your colors so that all of one color isn't just in one place. Having your colors spread out across the model is a way to kind of make the viewer look at everything on your mini and not just one thing. Yeah, have fun, Corsair. Thanks for stopping in. So do be thinking about color composition when you paint. If you put a bright color on the model, like ask yourself, is there somewhere else small that I can repeat this color? It doesn't always have to be the bright color either. Sometimes just repeating any color. The exception being like neutrals. Like a good dark brown, like black and brown, or like pure black. Usually you can get away with just putting that on a belt, you know, or on boots or whatever. And you don't really feel the need to repeat that on the model. But if it's an actual color that isn't a neutral, or if it will tend to draw the eye, like our off-white here, which we're going to work up, then we might hesitate and go, well, maybe we should actually, you know, be able to be repeating that. So here, like for the white, since I know it's going to be pretty light when I bring it up, I've got obviously white, 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 white. So already we've got a nice movement, and we got this lace bit here that's also going to be white. So those are all going to be white moving around the model, and then part of the feather also. So on the hat, which is not currently on the model. All right. So we're color compositioning. And here again we see that, and that shadow is from the feather, I believe, on the, or from, no, it's from the kerchief that goes out behind her. So we've got a lighter gold here, and then a darker gold here. And since my paint is thinned down, we are still seeing that darker gold right through it. That's the advantage of, if you want your zenith priming to stay around a little longer, use a bit of a thinned base coat. And if you're planning to kind of cover over it, grab your shadow color right away and block that in, right where that shadow was before you cover it up. Then you'll know that you meant to do that. And that's where you want that shadow. Excellent. We'll go a little later today, since I was completely discombobulated earlier. Another shadow area that's showing through is right here. See how this is lighter and that's darker? So I want to block in that little shadow area as well. It's good to do this at the beginning. That's why I tend to work with, before I really bring a lot of highlights in, I tend to bring my shadows in first. And part of that is that highlights typically cover better than shadows. So if I have to like bring in something over the top, I would rather have it have good coverage than be trying to work in something that didn't. So if I have to, like, if my shadow overextends and I have to correct, then I'd rather be correcting with light. I'm going to just line around the outside of this with our dark shadow color. Even though my blue is very dark, getting that darker brown edge around the outside of the brown, the gold item is a good call. The gold is quite close to her hair color, although it is, the base coat is anyway, but as we bring it up, and that's because we did use some shield brown in her hair, because we didn't want to go, we wanted to highlight a brunette hair without it going up toward gold. So I went the other direction with it, so to take it away from this color. And I'm still successfully reading them as two different colors once I put the yellow on, so that was successful. Now let's get this yellow painted over the top. Got a little bit of a drying around my edge, so I'm going to add a brush full of water. We have a cold week here in South Bay. Our temperatures decided to drop back down into almost the 50s this week, which is frustrating for me. I want it to get warm. I miss being in Texas where it would be like 80 by now. Though we are supposed to get up to the 80s next coming weekend, I think. All right, we're going to just paint over the top of this. We thinned down our yellow so that it would still retain the texture that we underpainted. And our texture does look a lot brighter toward the front and darker toward the rear, which it should. And then we'll put those buttons in. You wish it was in the 80s. Are you guys still cold too, D. Clerman? Or are you having rain? Ooh, I would love it if it was 90 plus right now in our. I'm very much a hot weather person. I love, like in Texas when it would hit 90, I would like walk outside. I remember like when I would go home for lunch to let the dogs out. And I would just walk outside and go, ah, what a fine day. And then I'd check my phone and it would say 90 degrees. Oh, almost 100. Nice. Well, you don't think it's nice. I do. But as I told David, he's like, why on earth would you want that? We'd have to have air conditioning. And I'm like, yes, everybody in Texas has air conditioning to keep the state from trying to kill them. Beautiful. You have the beautiful weather right now, Nomad Zeke. That's what I want. Actually, I really want 80. I really do want the in the 80s to come back. I just like cold. I feel cold. I hate it when I have to like put the flannel on and put on my jacket to go walk. It's annoying. But yeah, you're all warmer than me and it's sad. I'm very sad about this. Yeah, we've been having actually quite a lot of wind also, Kerniko. It does get windy here. And the sad thing is because it's so dry and we don't have your rain, and then it flings stuff into your eyeballs. I hate that. All right, I'm going to actually mix up a brighter, lighter yellow out of this since I have a few minutes. So I'm going to take my my half and half, like this little color, and I'm going to pop a bunch of yellow into it. It's still got a bit of that ochre color in it. And again, now we're way, way, way bright. But I want a little white in that. When I add the white, it bleaches out the intensity of that color just a little. Still stays bright, but it's not as terrible. And gold is very yellow, so this is where I'm going to start doubling down on the yellow. And this is my triad. And if you look at it, this triad is very similar to the NMM Gold Triad. It's just a little bit different. And this is it. You can do gold out of a bunch of different colors. Your mid-tone, shade, and highlight will all tend to converge on the same kinds of colors, but it's the differences Oh, couldn't land on the feeder. Wow. So I'm going to grab this yellow and see how high coverage I've gotten it. I added some white to it. If I can do highlights with it. Well, it's showing up. Probably needs just a little bit more white though. Now this is where you ask yourself, how yellow do I want my gold to be? Because if you want it to be very yellow, then you're gonna have to bring in this yellow color pretty heavy. I'm gonna add just a little more white. Still feel like it's not quite, like adding the white has two purposes. One, it brings the color up lighter so it shows better. Two, it adds opacity so I can see it when I put it down. I really want this yellow to show. I don't want to have to underpaint everything. So once you're working with highlights, there's really no excuse for having a color that isn't covering for you. Because you'll be working with things then with white in them, and there should be really no way those things do not, you know, have at least a bit of coverage. Oh yeah, Scotland at 90 with all the humidity seems like it would be pretty kind of like one of the layers of hell, like Houston. Sorry, D. Clearman. Aren't you down there somewhere? You're not that far down. All right, I've got a little bit of I always thought Houston sounded like way too hot and humid for me. I can deal with hot, but when the humidity really hits, then I'm like, what is this? My favorite weather is probably Hawaii. You know, give me 80 degrees with humidity, or give me 75 degrees with humidity. I'm happy with that. It's a little dry here for me. Oh, your redheads would perish. Yeah. All right, I'm going to try to see if I've got this covering now so I can do a decent pop highlight for it. Yeah. Now it's standing out, see? The challenge with the NMM Gold highlight is to keep it very yellow, but still have good coverage. Like, you need that kind of like sweet spot between where it's light enough that you can just highlight with it, but still yellow enough that it carries that gold effect. Because you will come in with a final white highlight if you're trying to do a shiny gold thing. So you don't need it to be your final highlight. You need it to be bright enough, though, that you can do highlights with it and not have to underpaint it. I'm going to kind of fade this color out a little bit as it goes back toward the back of the model. Start focusing it a little bit more on the interior, making the highlights smaller. Now I'm building up the yellow here in a round highlight. These are round buttons, so their highlights need to be round to preserve the shape. Kind of debating what I want to do on the interior ground here, if I want to do it with little stitches or something, or just yep, yeah, I started 10 minutes late, so I wanted to go till 11:10. Quindy, although do we have people waiting in the wings? We have Rhonda today, right? It's not Alpaca Nation Day. They won't hunt me down. It's Rhonda Day instead. Rhonda at 2. Got it. All right, well, I'll just go for a couple more minutes. Just trying to get some of these highlights blocked in so you guys can kind of see how it looks. I think that's looking pretty good, but I'm going to do, yeah. So there's that coming out quite well, and it is showing off now. It's showing up quite differently from our white, which is what we wanted for sure. There we are. For now, I'm going to leave that brown inside there because I like the contrast. I'm not sure what I'm going to do with it yet. I may want to bring in more shadow all around it, actually, around each of these little guys. Because she's been out in the weather and stuff, and there'd be probably a little bit of discoloration on any flat surface. Would have gotten water on it. I'll darken that down. Like that a little bit better. Interesting. All right. Now let's do pure white highlight, at least on those shiny balls. Shiny. And we don't have to go up to pure white anywhere else. Unless we really want to like pop like a little bit here on the front where the light is strongest. And maybe a little bit down here on the bottom of these little guys where they're sticking out more. Pure white is really the finishing move for something that's shiny. Would be sparing with it if you're not like going like major shiness. I'm just doing a little bit. There, that kind of fades out a little bit. I like that. All right. I'm going to say that that is good for now. So we got that pretty much good other than the back side. I didn't really do a lot on the back, but we can see how that has come up and how the gold will come up. And actually, I'm pretty happy with that color range that we got out of those colors. Thanks for hanging out with me, everybody. We'll see. I don't know how much longer we'll be doing this model, but we're going to stick to it now. Tomorrow, stretch. Tomorrow is, hey, we haven't seen this lady for a while. It's our wizardress. We're doing our funky purples and like cool pink stuff. I kind of like how she's turning out. She's really got some jewel tones on her. So this is our latest Bunch USA model. So we're doing a lot of gold on her too, but probably not tomorrow. I think I want to get these purples and everything else figured out. And no, Pendrake, I'm not sure I'm going to finish the bust because they haven't reissued it and it doesn't have an item number and nobody can get it. And I also feel like a lot of it's going to be very repetitive, like painting dragons and other big things. I don't know that I will do all of the model, so we'll see. I'm just not certain if how much longer we'll do the bust. But yes, so tomorrow we are going to do her. I really like this lady. And we'll continue working with all of our various colors. Yeah, I think she's really beautiful. Like, her colors are really beautiful. So, all right. Thanks, everybody. And do stick around or do come back for Rhonda at 2 p.m. Central. And I am going to head out. Thank you. Yes, thanks, Big Eiler. Yep. Bye-bye.